And welcome to episode 6 of the Chris Haas Show. I'm Chris Haas. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And a very special thanks to those of you, as always, that have liked and subscribed to my YouTube channel. Your comments and support really drive me to continue creating complimentary content. You know, some of you have left me really nice comments and compliments about these episodes, and I really do appreciate it. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please click the bell. I'll be dropping cutting-edge content on a regular basis. You can also find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So let's go ahead and recap episode 5. In episode 5, we spoke about the F&I documents. Now, this is certainly very important for you to know, of course, if you're a salesperson in a single point store, but even if you're not, right, as we discussed in that episode, F&I is going to be your next step after a salesperson as your career progresses in car sales. So it's certainly a good thing to know. And also, it's really important to know those documents because if your clients call back after the sale, we all know F&I has a reputation for not always being the best in answering their phone calls. They even tend to dodge phone calls sometimes in fear of a warranty or a gap cancellation. So it's always good for you to know those to know that paperwork so you can assist your clients better in the long run. So we covered a lot of ground in the last 5 episodes, and we've begun to build a strong foundation for you for your journey in your automotive career, which we're going to continue on here in episode 6, and we're going to continue to build on that foundation by reviewing more pertinent information as we move forward. So stepping into episode 6 today. So let's talk about the salesperson's toolbox. So I imagine everyone tuning in today has a toolbox at home. If you're a gearhead like myself, you might have a 750-piece mechanics tool set in your garage, or it might just be a couple of tools in your junk drawer right in the kitchen. But, you know, think about it. Do you use each tool for every job? No. You use specific tools for a specific job. So I'm going to help provide you with some tools today and in future episodes that are going to be good to have. Now, again, keep in mind, you're not going to use everything that you learn here all the time, but you're going to have tips, tools, and techniques available that will help you to not only sell more effectively, but also do so in a legally and ethically compliant manner as well. So, the intellectual and physical toolboxes that we're talking about. So as a salesperson, there's definitely going to be a few physical tools that you do want to have. First, I would highly recommend that you invest in a jump starter. If you take a look at what I have here, this is a DeWalt model, right? This actually has an air compressor on it too, which is pretty cool, and lighting as well. So I know a lot of stores do have these. However, most times they're dead. And when you go ahead and try to get that car ready, when a person just came on the lot, you're running around trying to find that jump start pack. Another salesperson may have taken it and not put it back in the right spot, or it's might have not been charged. So something like the unit that I just showed you, again, also has an air compressor on it, which is certainly a great tool. We know flat tires are a real thing sometimes on the lot. It will cost you about $150, $200 to invest in. I would highly recommend that. Now, keep in mind, if you obviously know a client is coming in on a certain vehicle, you definitely want to make sure that that battery is good in the vehicle and that all tires have air and so forth. This is just something that you want to have on hand, obviously, in an emergent situation, if it's a Saturday and you're taking your fresh up or whatnot. Second thing I'm highly going to recommend that you invest in is just going to be a small toolkit. So this is a 46-piece toolkit right here. You could certainly find, I would actually recommend the 24-piece Craftsman Mechanics tool set. You could pick one up in Lowe's. They're relatively expensive. This one here is a Husky model, cost about $20, $25 in your local hardware store. So reason for this, you're going to need to remove license plates from vehicles very often. On that note too, I would definitely recommend, especially if you're out there in the Rust Belt states, that you make friends with one of your technicians back in the service department. There's always a disconnect between sales and service, and we'll talk about that in later episodes, but there are times where bolts are going to be frozen on and you may need a technician to drill those off. It's not always as easy as just cutting or ripping the license plate off the vehicle. Folks may want to transfer that plate, and you're certainly not going to want to destroy it. So it is always good to have a technician on hand that's going to be willing to work with you. And again, we will talk a little bit more about your relationship with service in later episodes and this episode, but get to know your technicians and mechanics. There really doesn't have to be that disconnect there. It never was there for me since my father was a mechanic, so I've always felt comfortable in the shop. But if you're not, get back there and get to know those folks in the shop. They're great people, and at the end of the day, we all have the same goal. So, intellectual tools, back to those. One of the first things that you're going to need is a hook, right? So we all know in car sales here, we're not in car sales, we're in the communication business, and you're selling yourself. So back to episode 1, where we discussed just getting the job interview and so forth. I discussed the importance of that. So go ahead and check that out, because that really is a good reminder. Again, you're selling yourself. So I recall back years ago when I first started selling cars, over 21 years ago now at this point, my first sales manager had shared with me, hey, you need a hook, as I just had mentioned. And I couldn't think of a better one than being myself. At that time, I was young. I was 18 years old. I was a college kid putting himself through school. So that was my hook. I shared that with every one of my customers. I let them know a little bit about myself and who I was and why I was there. So on the contrast, I had a discussion with a colleague a few years back, and we had a very similar path in industry. And he had mentioned to me how when he started, he looked young and he was wearing glasses and lying and saying a lot of fake things to try to make himself look older and present older. Now, I, again, really don't see the reason in that. I really believe in being yourself. So your hook needs to be yourself. Find out what drives you, what motivates you, why you're there, and share that with your clients. There really is no reason to lie. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit more here, but it really isn't a good look, especially where we're at in the business right now. When you're telling the truth, there is a ring of truth that comes across to your clients. So let's go ahead and move on to self-prospecting and lead generation. So as a new salesperson in the dealership, or as a post-COVID salesperson, as some of you are, certainly not knocking you, but times are different. A lot of you came into the business when things were booming and there were supply and demand issues. Now that's starting to level out. So if you haven't self-trained, like we've talked about in future episodes, you're really going to feel that now. But the great news is it's not too late. We're certainly here to help you, and there are plenty of tools out there available to you. So even if you are a salesperson that's seasoned, please stay tuned here. Refreshers never hurt. I know anytime I have the opportunity for any training in my career, I have always jumped all over it. I always collaborate with colleagues, and I realize a lot of stuff that I forgot over the years. So again, as a new salesperson, it might be challenging for you to obtain inside leads. Reasons for that: managers in the dealership, they typically tend to disperse leads to senior salespeople. They may not trust you yet, or they want to maybe see you earn a lead. I highly disagree with this, and I am going to do an entire future episode just on this. Managers, you need to work from a point of leadership and roll your sleeves up and help your new salespeople. So what I just mentioned, is very important, and hopefully you do have a manager that's helping you out. If not, no fear, there's plenty that you can do to inside prospect in the dealership, and that's what we're going to talk about now. So you can ask your sales managers for lease maturity lists. So for those of you that don't know, those are going to be lease lists with dates with folks who've leased vehicles from that dealership and when the lease is going to mature. You can request orphan client list. Those are lists that are going to contain folks that have been sold at the dealership. However, that salesperson is no longer there anymore. And there is almost always a dead deal drawer back in the sales manager's area somewhere, always ask if you could take a look in that. You'll probably find a big old stack of deals in there, and there probably is one or two deals that you can put together in there from that dead deal drawer. It may have simply been maybe a sales manager or F&I manager didn't look at that carefully enough. Perhaps maybe your store has a new bank signed on now. So go through those and look through them. Those are definitely some great ways. And last but not least, work the service drive. Just as I mentioned earlier, right? And we talked about the toolkit and tools you may need. I would be in the service drive every day. Get to the dealership early and chat with everybody in service. Walk the shop, find out why those cars are on the lift and what's going on with them, and get with your advisors. Your service clients are excellent potential buyers, especially if you chat with your advisor and find out there's a very big RO potentially on a vehicle. That is going to be a great person to talk to. Even if you don't wind up making a sale from a person that you talk to in service, keep in mind, right, their referral. You're always going to leave them with a couple of cards and let them know about the referral fees that you have available and so forth. Other things that you can do. So Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, OfferUp, any website where vehicles are being offered for sale, reach out and ask how they're planning on replacing that vehicle. So even if they say that they're not going to be replacing it, they're just outright selling it, invite them into the dealership for an appraisal. And, when you do this, make sure you discuss the importance of a dealership sale versus a private sale. In the dealership, if the dealership buys that vehicle and the engine blows or it goes on fire 5 minutes after they buy it, the customer's never going to hear from them again, right? The person that sold them the car, they're never going to hear from them. If you sell that vehicle privately, that person from Facebook Marketplace has your personal information. They have your home address, and I could share horror stories with you over the years. A few years back, I privately sold a vehicle. Somebody actually called me a year later to complain about the fact that the battery was dead in the vehicle. I mean, really, it made absolutely no sense to me, but there's folks out there that do have that mentality. I know I've mentioned to many of you, and those of you that know me, my father, who's no longer with us, was a wholesaler. Back in the day, he did privately sell some vehicles, and he had some of the same nightmare stories too. People showing up 6 months, a year, even years later, complaining about the fact that a muffler went bad on a vehicle or so forth. So this is definitely a reality and a big selling point on why you'd want to sell the vehicle at the dealership. Now, salespeople out there too, you usually get paid for this as well. When I was selling cars back in the day, I didn't have all these internet sites. There was no Facebook. There was no Craigslist yet. I would actually buy newspapers and go through them and find out who was selling vehicles. And, it would take a lot. It would take about 100, 200 phone calls. But you know what? I would get one or two people in. But back to what I was mentioning about commissions being involved. A lot of dealerships pay $50 to $100 for a street buy. So again, back when I was selling cars, you bought a vehicle in and your reward for that was that you had a nice vehicle to sell in inventory for a street buy. Now you're even getting some credit for that in most stores. So that's just another easy way for you to make a few extra dollars and put a nice car in inventory in the dealership. So prospecting outside of the dealership. Now, you certainly don't want to be an ambulance chaser, but I would recommend that you carry a couple of these at all times around with you in your vehicle, just right, an emergency roadside assistance bag. These are very cheap, economical. You could typically put a business card in here and a business card inside and some other marketing materials. Now, reason for this, that's just being a good neighbor, right? If you see somebody broken down on the side of the road, you might want to pull over. You can offer them that emergency bag, make sure they have a cell phone to use, ask them if they need you to call someone for them, right? If they don't have a cell phone. And that's a very nice organic way to let them know that you are a salesperson and that the vehicle that they're having trouble with, they might be able to replace very easily with you. So what I just showed you here, folks, if you don't have the money, again, like I said, these are very inexpensive. Go to your parts department. Local parts departments, especially in franchise dealerships, tend to be a honey hole. I know I've been in local dealerships before where I've asked the parts manager, hey, is there anything we can clear off your shelves? And they are absolutely thrilled about it. I know I was in one store and they had racks. They told me, hey, here's merchandise that the owners had forgot was even there that they wanted to get rid of to make space for more parts. Included in that were emergency roadside assistance bags like this. They were getting rid of them because the batteries were dead in them for the flashlights that were in there. So keep in mind, parts department usually is a great source. And again, carrying something like that around is just a way to be a great neighbor. Quick story, I remember years back when I was selling Hondas, I helped a young woman who just simply needed a jump start in a mall parking lot. She wound up sending me, not only did she buy a car, but within a very short time, there were 3 or 4 referrals that she sent that came my way. And as we very well know, referrals are always the very best. So in addition to that, visit all your local businesses. In particular, you can start off with your auto-related businesses. I would highly recommend insurance agencies, auto repair shops, auto part stores, tire shops, collision, body shops, right? Again, any business that is auto-related. You could simply go ahead and speak with those folks and let them know that you'd love to help their clients that are in need. So again, just simply share your info with those folks at that business and let them know that you're there to help their clients and that you offer a referral fee. So I know in some stores this can be $100, $200 referral bird dog fee, as we call it. You may even want to offer some additional cash on your own outside of that. It's definitely going to be a good ROI for you. So how to talk with these folks, right? If you're meeting, for an example, with an insurance agent, I would simply let them know that you'd like to help their clients whose vehicles have been deemed due to a total loss. They're seeing that on a regular basis, right? Clients are calling in claims for vehicles that have been lost due to flood, fire, theft, or a total loss collision. And they typically, insurance agents, that's going to be one of the best ways for you to generate business. Now, you definitely, as I mentioned, want to leave your business cards behind with them and some other memorable items. So speaking of other memorable items, that could be pens. If you're in an area where there's snow and cold weather, snow scrapers, magnets, keychains. So it really is endless. Use your own creativity with this. I know I've seen in some of the groups that I'm in on Facebook, some of you folks have such phenomenal imaginations. It is remarkable, some of the things that I've seen, the way you have branded yourselves as salespeople. So on that note, if you do have questions on branding yourself, please feel free to hit me up. You can always DM me. I'm more than happy to help a fellow car person out. And keep in mind these memorable items that I'm talking about. These are things that you want to brand yourself, not necessarily with that dealership. Because again, of course, right, we're going to do the right thing. You're not going to take your customer list from Dealer Socket with you if you were to leave that dealership, but you're going to build a strong enough relationship with your clients that they're going to want to come back to you. I'll never forget first time I had that happen to me when I was with clients. They actually sat down and said, Chris, we're buying the vehicle just because we like you. And if you leave, they said, we know people tend to leave dealerships. Please let us know. They said, we don't care what dealership you wind up going to. It doesn't have to be, this particular brand that they were buying, which was a Honda. They said, please just keep us posted. Let us know if you go somewhere else. That's the relationship you should be building with your clients. And we're going to talk more why about that is so important. So, other ways to prospect outside of the dealership. Anywhere there's local bulletin boards are placed. Now, this might be a little old school, but supermarkets usually have bulletin boards posted up in there. I would definitely pin a couple of your business cards and a flyer if you've made one up there. Now, again, this is a bit old school, but it does tend to work very well in retirement communities. So take a look at the demographics in your neighborhood. If you're near a retirement community, you might want to first hit like those supermarkets up. And again, that is a great way to generate business for absolutely free. Speaking of bulletins, church bulletins. For those of you that do go to church and are active in your church, there's usually a church bulletin, paper one, right, that you can pick up in the church, and they also have them online. And you've seen on the back the advertising there. That is usually extremely cost effective, and it is usually a great way to bring congregation members into your dealership. There's a certain level of trust there. They've seen you in church with them before. So again, that just might be an extra way to do business. Finally, other than auto-related businesses, visit all your local businesses that you could possibly find. I'd also recommend you visit town hall meetings, city planning meetings, local car shows, and just introduce yourself. This is a great opportunity for you to get out there and meet local business owners that want to support you. Now, especially if you're new to sales, I know some folks come in and they're a bit introverted sometimes in the beginning. I never had that issue, but I know some folks do. This is a great way to get out there and just start mingling with people and breaking the ice and being comfortable in social situations. That's only going to help you more when you're taking fresh ups in the dealership and working the phones and so forth. I would highly recommend when you go to these events, wear your branded shirt or your shirt from your dealership. Strike up a conversation with that cashier when you're at the supermarket checking out. Usually they're going to look at your name tag and they're going to look at where you work, and they might even strike up that conversation with you. You never know if they're in the market for a vehicle or if their aunt or uncle or cousin is in the market for a vehicle. I remember back in the day, I would wear my Honda shirt with my name tag everywhere, and it was a bright blue shirt. So anytime I was in a Walmart, folks would stop me because they thought I worked in Walmart, and they would be asking me where things were in a certain aisle. And I know some people would get annoyed with that. Some of my colleagues, when I would tell them this would happen, they would say, "Oh, that's annoying." And I never thought so. I'd strike up a conversation with them. I would try to help them if I did know where something was located out in the store, or at least try to find an employee there. And I would let them know, "Hey, I don't work here in Walmart, but I do work in a Honda store. So if you ever are in the need for a vehicle, I would love to help you." So as we're winding down today in today's episode, treat this like it's your own business. It really is. And if you do this from day one, I promise you, I can tell you with conviction that in a couple of years, you won't have to worry about waiting for ups at the door. You'll be able to have a solid referral base and know that you're going to have a very high volume of clients coming through the door and asking for you each month. And there is nothing better than that. As we've discussed in previous episodes, referrals yield higher gross, better CSI, and just an easier and more feasible way of doing business all the way around. So that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And please like and subscribe to my channel on YouTube. You can also check me out on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And stay tuned for episode 7, which we're going to release here in the coming weeks, and also a bonus episode that we'll do for the upcoming holidays here, where we're going to talk about how to leverage this time of the year and the holidays and how to earn more of those referrals. So as always, please let me know what you liked and didn't like about today's episode. We all learned from each other. I look forward to seeing you again real soon. Thank you so much, and Chris Haas out.